on the table to create a coffee shop. And I think this proposal puts those folks that have invested their monies, and a number of them have used our 2% loan program, so I don't want to be, ignoring that fact. But they have put their own dollars on the table. And so I think that I know I would hear from some of the folks that have invested their own dollars in trying to struggle. I mean, and I know a coffee shop is a nice thing. Everybody wants a coffee shop. When you sit down with community members, guess what? When we planned this project for Lowry and Penn, and it's a big project. It's an Aldi store, and then there is around the corner a Subway and a employment agency up on the top floor that is one of our vendors. But we've had this empty space in the project since the project came online, which is probably, I think we had our winter coats on, Councilmember Hofstad, so it's been at least a year, 3 years, empty space, 3 years empty space. So I'm not too worried about this getting leased to somebody else either. That's what I'm going to say about that. But we also have a pad next to it that we own that we haven't been able to market either. So I concur with Councilmember Hofstad. I'm very nervous about this, the coffee part of it is really getting to me because it is. I just think that it puts these other coffee shops at a disadvantage, and I think it behooves us to take some time to understand this. We got this report today, as Councilmember Gordon pointed out. We have the budget coming up. I think we should take our time on this, particularly if we're looking at a space that is not going to be difficult to build out because it is new space. It's essentially unfinished, brand new commercial space. I don't know that we impact an October date if we wait into the next year. So I'm not going to support moving forward without recommendation. I'm going to continue with my motion to postpone on here.
Mr. Chair,
yes.
Could I also clarify what types of materials would be most helpful for the council members in making this decision? We can provide the RFP, we can provide the written proposal, the business plan, the budget, and site modification budget as well. Is there further analysis that would be useful? Or?
That sounds like it. Councilmember Tutton, you would like something else?
The other thing I'd like to know is what the rent is per square foot for the area and see how it compares with the rents that you're looking at. Thank you.
Councilmember Gordon?
And I guess I'm interested in getting the criteria that was used to assess the proposals. I also just had a couple questions now. I was wondering if you had an opportunity to look at the Midtown Freewheel Bike Center, which actually, and that has a coffee shop in it, I understand as well. And was that looked at?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Gordon, yes, we worked very closely with Don Flum, who was instrumental in helping the Midtown Bike Center get up and going. We had his input in the development of the RFP process. He stated many times that it was very critical to have some other kind of revenue-generating business that was helping a bike shop sustain itself, such as a coffee or food retail sales place. So yes, we did ask for his advice along the way. He served on our review panel as well, and we'll continue to work with our city's economic development department and community planning and public works to learn from what has already gone on with the Midtown Center and also take advantage of the resources, the business development resources that we currently have here at the city.
So you mentioned CPED, because I think one of the things that maybe strikes us is, the health department's doing this. This is business development. This is economic development. Did you have any assistance from staff at CPED? Did they review the business plan? Do they think this is viable? And maybe we could just have a moment to hear from them and see if they have given it the scrutiny that they would normally give these kinds of projects and think that the business plan is a viable plan.
Absolutely, yes. Before Eric takes over, I would just like to say we've had great support from CPED throughout this process from the very beginning in our initial conversations about what this would look like all the way through the RFP and the review process. So we're very grateful since this is definitely beyond the traditional scope of what our public health department does.
Mr. Hanson.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Eric Hanson. I'm Principal Project Coordinator with CPED. I work primarily in economic development projects in North Minneapolis. This is a very unique RFP for the city because it's a health department environmental change, but it does have that business aspect, and therefore we're asked to help with the RFP. Bike walk centers are a bike shop in general is a challenge. The research that we provided in the RFP showed that there weren't any bike shops between the river, 169, 394, and 694. There are about 80 plus bike shops in the metro area and not one in that area. So from a competitive standpoint, there's no natural competitors for a new bike store. However, they're a fickle business, and they have different competitors aside from just bicycle stores. They have commercial retailers like Target that sell bikes and sporting goods stores like Dick's Sporting Goods that sell bikes. And they also depend on what we found in our research is a consumer that's not necessarily prevalent in the market area in North Minneapolis, which is traditionally more affluent white males, older white males, in the research that we were able to see before we issued our little market study in the RFP. We did find out, though, during our process that Minneapolis, as we know in the bicycling community, is a little different. We have a lot more bicycle shops than we do in other markets, but there still is that gap. The bike shop that we see in front of us today is a startup, and with all startups, they're risky. We limited the proposals to only business districts where we thought they would have the best chance to survive because they'd be located next to other businesses in the area so that you get that trip chaining. The pro forma in the business plan does show a loss, but that's what we would expect from in the first few years, and that's what we would expect from a startup is to invest all of their capital and try and get the marketing and really capture the market. But what we see in the Cultural Wellness Center business plan is a real clarity in what they're trying to establish and where how they're trying to merchandise and how they're trying to market to the smaller niche area of North Minneapolis. Because without grabbing those who are within the half-mile area in the greater north side, you're going to have a lot more difficulty capturing the demand outside of North Minneapolis based on some of the just the misperceptions of North Minneapolis. The space that's proposed is in a commercial area that the city, as Councilmember Johnson has spoken about it, the city has had a lot of investment and interest in. It's adjacent to a grocery store and a hardware store and in a commercial district. The rents, when I did the calculations, are about $14 a square foot. That's typical of what we see in the market, aside from what we would call the substandard commercial space. North Minneapolis has a glut of substandard commercial space that is, for various reasons, not being kept up to the standards that we would expect in Minneapolis. When the Lowry Corridor planning was conducted, one of the consultants to the city did an analysis and found that the prevailing market rate rent for Lowry Avenue is about $5 a square foot. So this is a little higher, but the quality is a little higher. As far as the build-out, it's my understanding from the cultural wellness folks that they're getting some tenant improvements from the property owner and some improvements so the build-out costs will be minimal. I see the coffee shop aspect as just another revenue stream into the shop and not necessarily the majority of their revenue. They price their bikes, 90% of their bike sales are at $250 or less, and 40% of that is at about $50 or less. So their projections are, I think, comparable to what we see in their competitors, which is buying a new bike, perhaps at Target. They have shown, they have the ability to use some space that's very marginal in the property. It's a second floor space where they put a shop as well as spinning classes. That spinning class aspect is a winter activity, and there's already a constituency base for that spinning class, so that's some revenue that's more solid for a startup